Okay, here we go.
Looks like both players have kept full grips.
Leon leads with a temple and a
Yeah,
scry.
he's once again able to scry on his first turn. Colin
Both players
reciprocates. They're both
scry.
going to scry. Do they have good cards on top? Yeah. No, Colin looks like he's bottoming his. He's not happy with what he sees. He passes the turn back to Leon.
Well, we have a keep and a filter. Both players smoothing out their draws.
Leon already has a key card in his hand, the Skullcrack.
There's
Casting one of
another
those in
scry.
response to a War Leader's Helix is essentially dealing 7 damage off one 2-mana card. So they're already
We see
starting
him
to
keep
plan
another
their end
another
game.
card on the top.
Yeah, these two players are both beginning already to plan their end game. They're starting to think, how can I get that last point of damage in? They haven't yet got the first point of damage in, but they need to think about point number 20.
We see a second scry.
I don't
And
think
to
we're
keep
going
on
to
the
see
top.
too much play in the first turns of this game. Yeah, so we're yet to see any damage in this game.
But again, like you mentioned, the fact that they're planning the last point of damage, goes to show the complexity that a player has to show, not just in the top 8, but when trying to deal with a deck that has one game plan.
Yeah, the only point of life that matters is the last one.
And when you're playing Rabble Red, if you have life,
Well,
you're
this
in the game.
is very different to the Rebel Red deck. This is doesn't have Rebel Master, doesn't play creatures
yes.
much.
Well,
It's just a straight burn deck.
Forgive me for lumping them all in the same. You mean I seem to know red deck wins, which encompasses Rabble Red, Boros Burn, Red Aggro. What are the finer points of each of those decks?
They're trying to do very different things, and they operate on very different axes. Rebel Red builds up a huge board presence. Well, a very threatening board presence, outputs a lot of damage through creatures in the early turns. This burn deck, however, doesn't really play creatures. It doesn't care about the board. It lets you have the board and just burns your face mostly. One of the strengths of that is the fact that it makes opposing removal spells very weak. And we're in a format where, decks like Black Devotion come in with 10 or 12 main deck removal spells. If you don't have good targets for those, it's almost like card advantage because you've made a high number of their cards completely useless. Chandra's Phoenix is a terrible target for a removal spell because it just comes back later on. Young Pyromancer, if you wait a little bit to cast it, you can get value off of it immediately. So the removal spell does kill it, but you still got value from the card.
Well, we see there the shock killing it.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing here. Leon waited to start playing his cards out to get on the board so that he could get maximum value out of each card. That's the sort of game that he's playing right here. He's gone for a Skullcrack very early.
Okay.
He's not preventing any damage with that. He's just
Well,
getting damage in.
it is going to give him
and
a
he's
1/1
making
token.
a token.
And that token does represent a lot of damage. If
Potentially,
not
yeah.
blocked by the Phoenix.
And Colin doesn't have a Mutavault down this turn, so that token at this point can attack in profitably.
And a burn spell on the token is a burn spell wasted on the player.
Exactly. That Pyromancer has generated
There
card
we
advantage
see
to
it
him.
getting in for 1 damage.
Yeah, so Colin is down to 17 life, I believe.
Yes.
And I think that Leon has just taken a hit from the Chandra's Phoenix. Once again, the players are deliberating. Sometimes it's with all these instances, it's hard to tell whose turn it is. And unlike most matches,
There we go.
the shorthand for this is the guy who's playing spells, it's not his turn. Yeah, that's a resolved War Leader's Helix, gaining Leon a big chunk of life.
And I think even again with these players not actually playing such a complex deck like Control, imagine if they were. Imagine if this was Esper Control versus Azorius Control. How much slower would the pace of this game be? How much more would they have to think about it? And yet, the fact that they know their decks inside and out, they know the outs to play to, that's what makes them so confident, so comfortable.
I dispute that these decks are necessarily less complex than Control decks. Particularly in the mirror, these matches come down to very fine points of maths. So to play one of these at a high level successfully in this mirror match, you actually have to make a very you have to do more calculation than is typical for many decks.
But I think we can agree that whether you're playing control or you're playing red deck wins, sorry, not Rabble Red, when you're playing a deck, you need to know the ins and outs of that deck, you need to be comfortable with it, and you need to know what your outs are.
Leon
So
now
that when
has-
you're under high pressure like this, you know what to do.
Yeah, Leon here has a Japanese young pyromancer. Those ones are much more powerful. Yeah, the tokens that he makes have accents, and that makes them much more difficult to block.
The price tag also makes them much heftier. You know what the rule is with a Japanese card, just add 50% to the original price.
Sometimes more in the case of prized cards.
I'm pretty sure a Japanese Emrakul goes for 2.5 grand.
Well, young pyromancer certainly isn't 2.5 grand, Japanese or not. But it's nice to see these pimped out decks coming out.
It's also nice to see that Boris Charm right there. And a Lightning Strike
This
as well.
This is Colin getting very aggressive. He's just laying out 7 points of burn.
Okay. Well, the young Pyromancer and the tokens that it'll make represent a very fast clock.
Yeah, but Colin has decided that he's just going to go to the face. He's leaving that young pyromancer there.
This is where you try and burn it. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. But if I were in Colin's situation, I would want to burn out Leon as quickly as possible to prevent the incremental burn spells that Leon plays from generating tokens that can take over the game.
If Colin's casting his lightning strike at Leon's face, Colin thinks he can close this out quickly enough, though. Here,
And
though,
he's
we see
got
yeah,
maybe
we're
2
going
cards
to
in
see
hand?
another token off of that young pyromancer from a magma jet.
Facing a clear board from Colin. If it resolves. Well, of course it's going to resolve. There are no counters here.
Yeah, he'll get the token regardless of the resolution of the spell.
But the question is, what can Colin do in response that's going to change the game plan?
He might be thinking about killing that young pyromancer now, but it might be. I think it's a bit late. Colin's committed to the plan of going to the face with his burn spells here.
2/1/1 still represent a lot of damage in a deck like this.
Not to mention, Leon still has an open mana. A shock could change this maths considerably.
If that stack happened, it would resolve in a third token, yes? Or it would
Yeah,
result
because
in a
Leon
third
still
token,
has
yes?
a token floating, essentially. That ability is yet to resolve.
But if he used that open mana for a shock, he would get a third
He'd
one.
get a third token, yeah. Not to mention the damage from the shock.
Okay, well, we see Searing Blood.
Searing Blood is going to take another big chunk out of Leon's life total. I think he's going down to 5 here. Oh, he's reminded Colin that whole chain started off with a magma jet pointed at his Chandra's Phoenix. That's what kicked all of this off. It's easy to forget that when so many spells go on the stack. Leon has got his 2 tokens off that young pyromancer. Oh, he got one. Yeah, he got 1 token off of that one.
Sorry, let's go back to that Wally-Dis Helix that was cast a little while ago.
Yeah, the life totals I'm seeing on this pad don't reflect the life gain. I don't see any chunks of 4 life being gained here.
If this match comes down to the dealing of 4 points of damage,
Yeah, I hope that we might have this wrong, but it seems as though it just balanced out because he didn't write down the increase because he later took 4 damage and just wrote it down as 1 change.
yeah, perhaps.
So what I'm seeing right now is that Leon is down to 3 and Colin has open mana. I have Colin down on 11 though, so that's quite a bit of distance that Leon still has to cover to get in.
Leon being on 7 himself.
Yeah, I have Leon on 3 and Colin
3?
on 11 from the Searing Blood.
Oh, okay, okay. Alright, well, after correcting my terrible math, that really does change things.
It might be my math that is terrible. These life totals are very up and down. Still, Leon gets to untap with all his lands and take another crack at Colin. He has tapped 4 mana here. Well, yeah, he's gonna untap with 5 mana, correction. Looks like he has a War Leader's Helix in hand. So he might be able to get himself back into this game.
Well, let's see what he does at this. I believe we're still at end of turn.
Yeah, we're still at the end of Colin's turn.
Colin waiting patiently. Cards on
I
the
feel
table.
that if Leon had a shock that he was going to cast, he'd have done it with the Young Fire Monster still on the board to get the additional token.
Yes.
Colin takes this opportunity to have a drink of water.
I believe that's Pepsi.
It should be water.
Ah.
Very important to stay hydrated, very important to never drink Pepsi.
Fitness.
Coke tastes better anyway.
They do say that an element of magic, though, happens off of the playmat, so to speak. Being able to focus in between games, being able to pick yourself up after a round, focus, get ready for the next game.
Remember, these two players have over 8 hours of this tournament behind them already. Fatigue is a real thing in these circumstances.
And the fact that even with records like theirs, that they're still on top form, top play, shows that they've been able to keep focused.
Yeah, this is a critical turn.
We see a Sacred Foundry coming in untapped.
Yeah, this is... Oh, yeah, this is that Sacred Foundry is dropping Leon down to 3 life. So he's now... That's a bold move when Colin has mana open, because a burn spell could end this right away. Colin, though, doesn't necessarily know that Leon has a War Leader's Helix in hand. He could respond to that burn spell if Colin chooses to cast something that might kill him. Looked as though Leon was attacking with both of his tokens and his Mutavault, but he's now put the Mutavault back with his mana. If that's his attack, it could put Colin down as low as 7 life, which then puts him within striking range. I don't think there are many turns left in this game. Both of these
I think this
players
game
are
has
close to
become
death.
very convoluted in order of telling who's doing what.
Looks as though, okay.
Oh, it
Leon
looks like
is
the
past
damage was
turn.
taken.
Yeah, I think that puts Colin down on 7, while Leon is down on 3. But Leon does have that War Leader's Helix in hand. If Colin casts a burn spell at his face, Leon can respond and gain life back up to 7.
Again, we see him deliberating.
Colin is once again considering his hand. This game is very likely to end in this turn or the next one, so this decision is crucially important. Remember, Colin won the first game, so if he can take this one, he advances to the semi-finals, and one step closer to France. Colin decides to just pass the turn. That's baiting out a response from Leon.
He does have 5
Because if
mana
Leon
open.
tapped out at end of Colin's turn, then Colin can respond to the War Leader's Helix with lethal damage. So here it's a case of who's going to blink first. And Colin's facing another
see
attack
everything going
from
for the
that
swing.
team. This will put Colin down to 3 life, and that's precariously low. Looks like Colin has just accepted the damage. Both players now are on 3. Both players have open mana. Both players have cards in hand. Leon has Chandra's Phoenix, but he's not going to cast it. Because if he taps that low, Colin can kill him immediately. So Leon knows he needs to keep his mana open for a War Leader's Helix, or he can die on the spot. And Colin knows that if he goes for it while Leon has mana open, he won't get there. Leon has a bit of an advantage here that he can deal damage using his creatures on the board.
Here we go, we see the first 2 tap.
Yeah, this is a skull crack. this would kill Leon.
We've
So
got
Leon
4
has to
mana for
respond.
Leon open. We see War Leader's Helix. And we see something in response.
No, Colin only has 2 Stoke the Flames, which he can't afford to cast.
Okay.
So the second game belongs to Leon.
After much deliberation, the players are 1-all.
So as like I was saying, each of them had lethal damage in hand for several turns, but neither one wanted to blink first. Let's see if the third game goes any differently, or if we're looking at yet another high-stakes chess game.